The F1 24 season is finally here, but if you didn't keep track of the offseason, and believe me, it was silly this year, this is going to be your crash course for what happened with each team the last 3 months. But first, we need a new calendar. There we go. That's better. Now, before we get into it, we are going to go team by team with what happened in their off seasons, but it is worth noting at the top that the entire grid is the same drivers in the same seats as Abu Dhabi 2023. So there hasn't been any driver movement in the off season, but driver movement has been announced. Now let's just go team by team, starting at the top with Red Bull. Now, Red Bull have started to move towards a zero pod concept. They've made big changes to their air intake and their cooling system, which has allowed them to reduce the size of their side pods. It's like Adrian Newey saw the Merc 2 years ago, said, yeah, give me a couple of off seasons. I'll make that bad boy work. Already in day one of testing, we saw Max do 130 something laps. He had a second gap to the next fastest car on the grid. Oh man, we got a future show coming out this weekend. We're going to be looking very heavy at Max wins totals and very likely looking at the overs. Now, aside from Max and his dominance, Checo does expire his contract at the end of this season. Now, a couple of driver movements have already been announced. We're going to talk about those in this video, but we have our eyes glued to Checo's seat. I think unless he finishes with a strong P2 behind Max in the Drivers' Championship, I think it's very unlikely that Checo retains his seat. I got my eyes on Alex Albon to maybe swoop in as second chance in his Red Bull. Moving on, let's talk about Ferrari. Ferrari has added yellow to their livery. Woo, boy, it looks good. Aside from that, technically with their car, it looks to me like Ferrari has focused a lot on gaining downforce on their car. We know the power unit is fast, but they struggled with downforce and they struggled with tire degradation and tire maintenance in 2023. We saw the air rakes on the car in the first day of testing. They had a custom one almost behind the driver's cockpit. To me, that looks like they're really analyzing the airflow towards the rear wing. Now, have they been successful in gaining downforce? Yeah, it looks like they have. What have they also discovered? Porpoising. Welcome to the new regulations, Ferrari. It's about time you're here. The car's been bouncing a lot in Bahrain, but you know what that's perfect for? Lewis Hamilton coming into the team. Yes, that's right. Lewis Hamilton has announced he will be a Ferrari driver after this season. Starting in 2025, he's going to take Carlos Sainz's seat. Carlos does expire at the end of this year. He's another driver that we got our eyes on, looking for where he might go. I think it's likely he ends up with Sauber to kick off the Audi era of that constructor. But I'm very interested to see how Carlos performs this year, knowing that he's already lost his seat for next season. Now that brings us to Mercedes, and yes, Lewis Hamilton has announced a contract with Ferrari. It starts next season, so he is with Mercedes all of this year. It's going to be a very interesting dynamic to follow along with. Are they going to put blinders on him in the factory? Does he even care to help develop this Mercedes? I'm sure that he cares to win races. I'm sure he would love to go out on top in the Mercedes, but it's just a very interesting dynamic to announce it before the season and then continue this whole year in that car. Very strange. Toto is going to be around till he's 80. On the technical side of things, Mercedes has an entirely new philosophy with this car. They basically stopped upgrading in the middle of last year, focused on this season, and they've added silver to the nose. Okay, well, that will bring us... Clearly, there's a jump cut there because I have a cat with me now, but fitting. I got an orange cat. Let's talk about the papaya McLaren. Now, McLaren's mostly looking to just build on how they ended last season. You all remember they were terrible at the start of the season. They were slow, they were unreliable, but they really put it together right around the time where they switched their suspension to match the Red Bull suspension. So I'm expecting they continue to progress through the beginning of this year. They did sign Lando and Oscar to long-term contracts. I think that's very smart because this season is going to get silly with the driver contracts expiring. And McLaren is saying, we don't want any part of that. Our drivers are secure. We like the way we're developing the car. Let's go. Okay, that brings us to Aston Martin. They, of course, have the same driver lineup that they did last year, just like everyone else does. But Fernando Alonso's contract expires at the end of this year. I think it would be great if he spends a year in the Mercedes car next season to fill Lewis's role, continue with a veteran presence. It's clear George Russell is going to be the leader of the Mercedes team moving forward. But I think Fernando Alonso could sweep in there in what seems to be a developing car that might have some pace. He still seems to be at the top of his game. Get him out of Aston Martin. Get him out of the Stroll clown show. Anecdotally, Aston Martin as a constructor typically starts the year really strong. They front load their development. They do a lot of it in the offseason. Now they don't really develop that much through the season. So keep an eye on them in the early races of the year. Okay, Alpine. Again, they're bringing back Pierre Gasly and Esteban Ocon. Yeah, let me know how I say Ocon. I got it. Tell me in the comments for sure. With Alpine, their entire car, they said it on the broadcast, everything except for the wheel is new. Is it going to work? Who knows? Alpine struggled mightily with power and a lack of power in 2023. It does seem like they've tried to focus on that. They've got a new installation of the power unit. They've rejigged their exhaust. They feel that they lost a lot of their power in the NGUH unit, so they're focused on trying to get some of that power back. To me, it seems like Alpine is just spinning their wheels, pun intended. Both of their drivers expire at the end of this season. Feels like they have no real direction. Not sure what to expect from Alpine. Okay, next up is what used to be called Alfa Romeo. The title sponsor of the team is Stake F1. However, and I thought this was hilarious, Stake F1 is headquartered in Switzerland, but Stake does not have a license to market themselves in Switzerland, which you think someone might have looked into. Anyways, they're going by Stake F1 or Sauber when they're at their headquarters. I think I'm going to call them Sauber for the year. Aside from that, they have both the same drivers. Valtteri Bottas, Guan Yu Zhou are both back. Both contracts expire at the end of this year. I think that's intentional. Audi is coming in a couple of years. I think that they want to keep themselves with a clean slate for a new start under the Audi era. And I'm looking at Carlos Sainz to probably fill one of these seats at the end of this season. Oh, yeah, and they've added a lot of green to the car. Next up, another name change. We used to call them AlphaTauri. Now they're going by Visa, Cash App, Red Bull, VCARB, or RBs, which doesn't stand for Red Bull or Racing Bulls. It's just RBs. Anyways, they've gone back to the Toro Rosso livery style of colors, which I like. Everyone seems to like that. They brought back both drivers from the end of last season, being Daniel Ricciardo and Yuki Tsunoda. Both of those contracts expire at the end of this year, so they will be heavily involved in the silly season. Next, that brings us to Williams. I don't expect a whole lot out of Williams this year. They're still in the infancy of the reset under James Vowles. Remember, they brought him in from Mercedes. He wants to completely redo the entire team top down. I don't expect to yield any fruits from their labor this season, but I love Alex Albon. I think he's a great driver. I think he got a short end of the stick in Red Bull. I wouldn't be surprised if he gets a second chance with Red Bull after Checo expires this year. They've also got Logan Sargent back in the seat. And I think, in my opinion, they've got the best decal of any sponsor on the entire grid with the Duracell over the air intake over the driver. It's just perfect. Looks just like a battery. And then lastly, last in the constructors, last in the drivers. They're going to be last again this year. And we've lost Gunther Steiner. That's right. Haas, their big offseason update was to can everyone's favorite team principal. Gunther is gone. I'm going to butcher his name. Ao Komatsu is taking over. He was one of the race engineers previously. Now he's the team principal for Haas. Gene is still, of course, around. They're openly expected to be very slow to start the year. We got to give Komatsu probably the full season, maybe even multiple seasons, to redefine what it means to be in the Haas team and start moving them in a better direction. Remember when they came in, they were P4 in the constructors, and it's just been downhill since there. So yeah, I'm sure we missed a lot, but that's kind of the main stuff that's happened with the teams in the offseason. What does that mean for performance on the track? What does that mean for you? And how are we going to make money off of all of that? Well, great timing. Here at F1000, we play season-long futures bets, and we're recording that show this weekend. It will be out on Sunday, and then we're right into race week with Bahrain. Who's excited? I'm excited. It's been a long off season. A lot happened. F1 is back. Let's go!